Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Kevin Armstrong, joined, as always, by my good friends, Peter Baracchini and Alex Hobson. We combined, and a few of our other colleagues, write about everyone's favorite team to love and hate your Toronto Maple Leafs. And it has been a pretty hectic day today. We're recording on Saturday, and there were just a frenzy of trades. It almost had the trade deadline feel today, and Toronto got in there, and they made a bit of a steal in a lot of views. But he might be a player only there for a short period of time. I'm not sure. But Jared McCann, Stratford, Ontario boy, and former first-round draft pick, is now part of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I know, Peter Baracchini, you're loving this trade.
Yeah, I think all of Leafs Nation is really loving this trade, mainly because of the fact that he's kind of like middle six forward that Toronto would love to try and have and try and bring in, knowing that Zach Hyman is on the way out. Alexander Kerfoot could possibly be expendable, given the fact that he's also center and wing, and McCann can play both positions as well, move up and down the lineup in that second or third line role. There's a familiarity there with him being a Sault Ste. Marie player, playing under Sheldon Keefe and Kyle Dubas when he was the GM. And the fact that, looking back on this whole entire day, it was just so like you mentioned, it was hectic. I was still trying to process of what was actually happening. And the fact that they were able to get him and at that price, considering that, he's had not the best offensive numbers and output, but this was probably one of his best seasons. And if he's able to do that with Pittsburgh Penguins team, with the likes of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, who knows what he could do on Toronto with Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and William Nylander at his disposal as well.
Yeah, and when you talk about that price tag, it was Philip Hollander and a 7th round draft pick, which is pretty cheap for a guy like this that is a top 6 guy. So, Alex, you were liking this one as well. But I also think Brian Burke's not a guy to be taken to the cleaners on these types of trades either. So what are you seeing in this trade?
For me, I'd honestly just circle back to the initial trade where the Leafs sent Kasperi Kapanen to Pittsburgh. And I consider the fact that the Leafs got Philip Hollander in that trade and sent him back. So in a vacuum, the Leafs essentially traded Kasperi Kapanen for Jared McCann and Rodion Amirov. And because of that, I have nothing but good things to say about this trade. I cannot find a single negative. And there's also one other key factor that makes this deal so much better for the Leafs. And it's the fact that I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were. I think it was because he didn't play I think he played less than 40 games in 2016-17, but he is going to be an RFA at age 26 instead of a UFA. So the Leafs have the ability to negotiate him and kind of get first dibs at him when time comes, when his contract expires. And honestly, he's been consistently improving every year he's been in the NHL. He put up totals similar to Zach Hyman this year, 32 points in 43 games. I'm just loving every bit of this trade, especially since the guy they gave up for him was a guy that was already in Pittsburgh to begin with. So I really can't get enough of it.
Yeah. Now, the only downfall to this, and we're doing this without the information of what that protected list may look like, but he could be gone in a couple of dates. Seattle could get a shot at him, and there was a lot of thought that Pittsburgh wasn't going to be able to get him on the protected list, and Seattle would have essentially had a chance to get McCann and Kerfoot. Everyone believes Kerfoot's gone. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this is also insurance for the Leafs. Now you've got McCann and Kerfoot, and they might take one of those guys. So that still keeps you with a solid top 6 or third line center for this deal as well. Who wants the last word on that one?
I was just going to add in, I did see that it's possible that they could have a back end deal with the Seattle Kraken in hopes that maybe, try and get something more substantial or make a bigger deal out of it. But I think that this is something that the Toronto Maple Leafs would love to hang on to. I think they would want to keep Jared McCann in the fold, given the fact that they need to fill out some of those roster spots and the wing positions, especially on a cheap contract like his, 2.94 for one more year. And as Alex mentioned, and I saw the tweet from David Alter, there's going to be more years of control with that. So I think with that, and the fact that you have a trade chip in Alexander Kerfoot that you could probably get a good return after the expansion draft, I think you would want to try and hang on to both. One for McCann for a roster spot, and Kerfoot if you do decide to keep him, but you have a chance to get something even more substantial after the fact as well.
So let's switch over then to the protected list. They have been submitted to Seattle, and Ron Francis and everybody's working through. They're going to have a great team. I always think that's really exciting for a city when they've got a team starting from scratch and you get to see them put it together. But they're going to get somebody out of Toronto, and the thought for a long time has been that it's likely going to be Alex Kerfoot, who's going into his last year with the Toronto Maple Leafs under contract. $3.5 million. And that seems to be more and more the way it's going. I still wonder if Dermott could be grabbed. He's a pretty reliable defenseman, and he's got a really cheap contract. But Alex, are you on the bandwagon that this is Kerfoot's last ride in Toronto and he's headed out to Seattle?
I do think there is some life to it being Kerfoot's last kind of hurrah in Toronto. However, I don't think he's going to get claimed in the expansion draft. And the reason I think that is just because, like all the points that Peter mentioned just there, I don't think the Leafs would have gone out and traded a decent prospect like Philip Hollander for a guy like Jared McCann, who's just had a career year, and he's got all sorts of control on him, and he's got all sorts of different aspects to his game that would be appealing to the Leafs. I don't think they would have gone after him only to expose. And I expected for the draft, but I don't think that rules out the possibility of them using him as a trade chip, like Peter mentioned. I think if anything, this really kind of encourages the Leafs to go with the 7-3-1 protection pattern instead of the 8 skaters, 1 goalie, because in my eyes, on the back end, you're protecting Morgan Rielly, TJ Brody, and Jake Muzzin. You're not protecting any other guys. If you've got the option to protect three defensemen, it's going to be those 3 guys. And I just think that I think that the McCann acquisition kind of opens up another spot for them to protect for forwards. And I don't think they want to lose Kerfoot for nothing, because I think in the playoffs this year, he showed that he can be a pretty valuable player. He's got a bit of an edge to his game. I think teams would be interested in a guy like that, especially since he's got 2 years left on his deal. So while I don't necessarily believe that the Leafs are going to keep him past this year, I don't think they're going to lose him through the expansion draft.
I was surprised that Kerfoot didn't move. That was my thought a while back when I did a story on the expansion draft and what the Leafs options were when it came to that. And to me, I felt like Mr. Dubas would be trying to get some value out of Kerfoot instead of trading him away. And during the frenzy before 3 p.m. Eastern today, I thought that we might hear a Kerfoot name come up during that, but that wasn't the case. So, Peter, is Kerfoot going to be wearing a big S on his chest in September and October?
If it's not with an S, like I said before, it's probably going to be with another team. It's I'm trying to put a good way to say it. I just can't foresee him being with the Seattle Kraken at this point. Just given the fact that he can be traded. Granted, it may not be after the expansion draft or even before the expansion draft. It's probably looking more something like during the beginning of free agency, where it's everybody's fair game, where you can make the signings again, you can make the trades, or even during the NHL draft where you can make a bigger deal. Again, I'm still on the big hype train of getting Connor Garland. I don't know if Alex Kerfoot is going to be enough, but Leafs do have a lot of other pieces to throw in at their disposal as well. So if it is a Kerfoot for Garland kind of scenario, I'm all for it. Or if it's Kerfoot going for somewhere else to get more help on a right defense spot, given how maybe Justin Hall could also be expendable during the expansion draft. We know how Dave Haxtell relied on him quite a bit with the Maple Leafs. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. I know that I wouldn't I would hang on to Kerfoot, but I wouldn't try and expose him given the value that he could possibly have.
Okay, so let's just quickly wrap it up then. And Peter, if you're Ron Francis, we don't know for sure who's available from Toronto, but if you're Ron Francis, who are you taking from Toronto?
I would go with Justin Hall, given the fact that you need some stability on the back end. He's a right-handed shot. Again, like Dave Haxall relied on him quite a bit on, 5-on-5 situations, penalty kill. And this may be an opportunity for him to get some power play time as well. I know that we saw that he was able to shoot from the point quite a bit. And I think that's going to be a real asset for them going forward.
Mm-hmm. Alex, who are you taking if you're on Francis?
To me, it's a toss-up between Dermott and Hall. And so just for the purpose of not agreeing with Peter here, I think I'm going to go with Travis Dermott. I think he's a little bit younger, and he can play the right side. I think he's in Toronto. He's never really had the chance to blossom into a top four role because he's never really been able to get consistent playing time there. I think Seattle might be able to offer him that, and I think we might be able to see him take a step forward. So between those two, I'll go Travis Dermott.
All right. What about Michael Hutchinson? We'll leave that one alone there.
Imagine that.
Okay, that would be nice. This is the Hockey Writers. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and also follow us on all your social media platforms, the Hockey Writers, and head on over to thehockeywriters.com for great articles posted by the hour by a team of journalists, well over the 140 mark at this point, I believe. So head on over to the Hockey Writers and check us out, and we will have a full rundown of all expansion draft as the news breaks in this crazy week that is coming up in hockey. It's a fun one in hockey. Here we are, dog days of summer, and we're talking about hockey in July. So that's great. So when we talk about hockey in July, usually we don't have an expansion team to talk about. Usually we have a lot of the crazy, silly season to talk about. In years gone past, free agency is already open at this point. We've got 28th for free agency. There's a lot of chaos going on, and the name Gabriel Landeskog came up this week for headed to Toronto. The words were that he lives half time in Toronto. His wife is from the Toronto area. He would love to come back to Toronto. And we talked before the show, and the guy that originally put this out is well respected and has broke some things when it comes to this. But I was like, are you kidding me? This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. All we do is sit here and talk about the core four is too expensive. Now we're going to make it the core five, and you got five guys, you got nothing else. I couldn't believe it. Landeskog, what is going on here? So, Peter, you brought some reality to that because you really think that the guy who broke this and said it could happen is to be respected on that.
Yeah, I woke up the morning after it happened. David Pennotta from the fourth period mentioned this on Sportsnet 590, and I listened to the full entire clip, and he said that, again, going back to Alexander Kerfoot, that if they were able to shed that $3.5 million, granted, it may not be enough wiggle room for other signings. It is enough to sign Gabriel Landeskog, and they would have to free up more cap space afterwards to address other needs. But given the fact that maybe he could be in the market for a $7 million deal, it may seem like a lot, but William Nylander's making an average annual value of only 6.9 at the moment, I believe. So just a shade over what he's making right now. But it is interesting. And would the Maple Leafs love to go after Gabriel Landeskog? Absolutely. He's basically a more offensive type of Zach Hyman, if you will. But at the same time, cap restraints, the restrictions, it is going to be difficult to try and maneuver and try and shed off the salary cap or contracts as well, such as like maybe Pierre Engvall, Justin Hall as well. Travis Dermott is probably going to be a trade chip as well. So you have a lot of factors into it. Mainly the salary cap is their number one enemy right now. But if it were to happen, I mean, great. I mean, this is going to be a huge sign for them. But then again, you got to manage it properly.
I feel like we're playing NHL 21 and we got salary cap rules off and we're playing on easy because this is crazy to me. Of course, we'd love Landeskog on this team and imagine him playing with those core four guys, and it would be great to watch this. But this is fantasy land stuff to me. I just can't wrap my head around this actually being real. Alex, is there anything that you see as this being in any way realistic?
So first and foremost, I just want to say I think it's hilarious that we're at the point when we're talking about bringing guys home to Toronto who aren't even from Toronto. And moving past that, I'll tell you how confident I am that Gabriel Landeskog is not coming to Toronto, Kevin. I tweeted out that if Gabe Landeskog signed in Toronto, I would eat the Carolina Reaper and chase it with a spoonful of horseradish. So
I almost want this to happen. Because it happened on the show.
That's what I said. It's it would be a win-win situation because it's either Gabriel Landeskog signs in Toronto or I don't die. So no, realistically, I would love to have Gabe Landeskog on this team more than anybody. I'm a Kitchener native. I watched him play in junior, and I've always been a big fan of his game. I think he's a class act as well. But the Leafs are going to have to do some serious cap gymnastics if they want to bring him in. And I'll leave it there. If the Leafs can make it work, I will be here for it, but I don't expect that to happen.
Yeah, the salary cap, sure, they could get him in, but then everybody else would be on a league minimum. I can't see how you could actually make a full 2022 man roster without those 5 contracts. And to be honest, guys, as much as a Landeskog would be great, if you're going to spend that kind of money on one player at this point, I would want it to either be an elite goalie or a super elite defenseman. And because they've got enough forwards, they're maxed out there. So if they're going to start spending that kind of cash on one player again, then that's a position that I would prefer.
And it's also a good thing too to try and divvy it up, like you said, to try and find a solid goaltender, a solid defenseman, better depth options that you can spread that cap around. So that to me, it would seem more like the better option as well.
Mm-hmm. So Minnesota made some waves this weekend. Bill Guerin, the GM in Minnesota, got hung up on by one of the guys when he bought out Zach Parise and Sutter's contract. Very surprising move in Minnesota this week. And of course, that meant there were 2 more players for everyone to say, bring them to Toronto. They're coming to Toronto. So obviously they both are great players, have been great players in the past. They're both, I think, over 36 at this point. I don't know how much room, how much of a pay downgrade they would accept, because they have been bought out. So it's not like they're going to be hurting for money. But do they care about coming there? I believe they're both Minnesota boys. So do they care about coming to Toronto and helping this franchise? I don't see it. Peter, do you?
It is an interesting situation because there was an image of Zach Parise in a Maple Leaf hat going around. So obviously you're already speculating that, Zach Parise in Toronto. Great. It would be nice to try and see him and Jason Spezza as a 4th line. I think they could do some real damage there. But I think they want to try and go a little bit younger. I think they want to try and go early 30s as opposed to late 30s. We saw kind of how the Joe Thornton experiment worked. Granted, he was a bit older in his 40s. If they do try and go for somebody, I think you could try and get more stability out of Ryan Suter, because Parise has had his injuries in the past, and Ryan Suter is a very good shutdown 2-way defenseman who can hit, block shots, and even get the shot off quick from the point. So if anything, I think he would be more of a great possibility over Zach Parise. But again, he's a left-handed shot. I think he tried to go for the right-handed shot as well. Again, like everything else, it would be to see who they try and go after.
Mm-hmm. Suter, it is a big surprise to me. I don't understand why Minnesota did it. But Suter definitely would look nice to help out back there. But Alex, are you thinking either of these guys would be coming to Toronto to help out this franchise at this point in their careers?
I don't think so at all. I love how Peter brought up the fact that there was that picture of Parise going around wearing the Leafs hat, because again, here's a guy that's American and he's been American his entire life, and people are saying bring him home to Toronto. I guess Toronto's just everybody's second home at this point. But no, I really don't see either of them coming to Toronto. I was listening to the Steve Dangle podcast a couple days ago, actually, and apparently Ryan Suter's no move clause is almost entirely Canadian teams. Yes, he doesn't want to deal with that I don't know what you'd call it. I guess the taxes or like whatever the drop is in money if you're in Canada, as opposed to playing in the U.S. He's an American kid. Well, I guess maybe not so much of a kid anymore, but he's an American player, and I just can't see him wanting to come to Toronto. And as for Zach Parise, Peter, you kind of touched on his injuries and his history on that front. I mean, I honestly, if the Leafs brought either of those guys in on a cheap deal and on a short-term deal, you wouldn't see me complaining, but I don't even think it's an option for them at this point. I think at the very least, Zach Parise is going to end up in Long Island with his buddy Lou Lamoriello.
True. Yeah. As we said, though, when starting off the show, it's a wild July right now. Can you imagine that getting that call from Bill Guerin as these guys that still have years left on their contract and just to hang up on them? That's something else. There's a lot of movement coming up though in the next week, and a lot of things are going to be happening. Toronto still has a lot of holes in that roster though that are concerning. Sure, they've been starting to fill it with a few different players here and there, but I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not convinced, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not convinced that Jack Campbell can carry the load for 55, 60 games next year. I think they've got to address the goalie situation, and that's the rumors that I want to hear. No more forwards. There's enough forwards. Somebody tell me who the goalies are. And we did hear, and this goes back to Peter, you've had this going for months, that you wanted the guy from Arizona in here. And there was starting to be a little bit of pickup that Darcy Kemper could be coming to Toronto. That seems to be ending, kind of running out of steam now. So where are you guys on the whole goalie front and what Toronto does with that? We'll start up with you, Alex.
Here's the thing. I do kind of agree with you in the sense, Kevin, that I don't know that Jack Campbell would be able to shoulder the load of a 50, 60 start season like Freddie Anderson's done in the past. Having said that, I do wonder if the Leafs would be willing to give him a shot to be that 50, 60 start guy this year. And I know that the position the Leafs are in right now, they don't really want to be gambling, but I think there's enough decent goaltender options out there that they could get for a relatively cheap cost that you could almost use as sort of like a 1B and give Campbell the 1A start. So he would end up with the bulk of them, but maybe not, I guess, all that Freddie all that Freddie did in the past, right? So obviously Yaroslav Halak, it was just announced that he's not going to be re-signing with Boston. He's an option. Darcy Kemper, like you said. I don't think Chris Driedger's an option anymore. I thought I heard something saying that Seattle was going to be claiming or taking him from Florida. So he's off the market. I think there are a number of different ways they can go about this for next year. I'm really interested to see how Dubas handles Freddie Anderson. That's going to be a very interesting storyline. But yeah, I ultimately think that the pursuit should just be to get a 1B, get a guy who can come in and start 30 games, start 40 games if he has to, and at the very least get the job done.
So Peter, you've been talking with Kemper for months, and this week when Kemper started to get some steam behind it, I was like, Peter, we're never going to get him to shut up on the show this week. but it seemed to run out of steam a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is still a possibility, or what do you do in net for Toronto?
At the trade deadline, I thought it was more of a possibility to try and get Kemper. Then as the season wore on, or as even the offseason wore on, I started to think that because of his contract, even his injuries in the past, you wanted that stability in the playoffs. I think you're not probably going to see that enough right now. I think they hang on to Kemper as a starter in Arizona. But again, that piece that I wrote was kind of relevant at that time because there were talks of Kemper, and it still is a possibility that they can move him. Right now, I think it's going to be a 40% chance that he does move and 60% chance that he doesn't. Again, that's probably going to change even more. But as Alex mentioned, I'm looking at the goaltending FAs right now. It's very bare, but the best option that Alex mentioned is Yaroslav Halak. And looking at his numbers, he went 17 games or games started. He went 9-6-4, 905 save percentage, 253 goals against average. If you're looking for a good quality backup, I think he is your best option. given the fact that when he was able to come in for Tuukka Rask, he did an outstanding job, lights out games that he played. There's also Linus Ullmark. There was talks that the Leafs were in on him as well. So they have options to get some good quality backup and maybe give Jack Campbell the rest that he needs to every now and then. If they are going to swing for a fence and think that maybe Jack Campbell isn't where he's at, I highly doubt that. But if they do, there's always the trade market to try and still trade for Darcy Kemper. But I think they go the FA route instead.
So I think the moral of this story is, kids, if you're listening, start putting on the hockey pads. Don't worry about being a forward anymore. Put on the goalie pads. And because there's a shortage of goalies right now, and we need to have a few more in this league. It does seem to be drying up a little bit. Or you could just go the Vasilevsky route and wear the big pads instead. Oh, we won't go there.
I'm pretty sure he had a whole other goalie inside of his jersey there.
So this is the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. Make sure you like and subscribe to our show, and also follow us on your favorite podcast platforms and on social media. So it's time to wrap up the show with our social media talk. And as you can see, I've got a different background. So I've been on holidays this week, so I haven't been on the social media too much. But when things started going a little bit nuts today, it was pretty funny, and I suggest you follow the thread. And I believe it was after Elliot Friedman put out the Ryan Ellis deal, and Ryan Ellis, the up and coming NASCAR driver, said, "I don't want to be traded to Philadelphia. Trade me back." And then all these Philadelphia fans and all these things, and Gritty got involved in it, and it was quite funny. And then as that trade rolled out more, he was like, "Trade me to Vegas," and all this stuff. And apparently the guy used to play hockey and is still like a beer league hockey player, but is a NASCAR driver now. So he got in the mix, and I thought that was funny to watch roll out today. Alex, what did you see this week on social media?
So I saw a tweet from at Brian CRD, who's one of my favorite follows on Leafs Twitter. He's always got some pretty funny stuff. Obviously, fans were kind of throwing a fit over looking back at the whole Nick Foligno trade back in April. And I was always a big fan of that trade. And I said this on Twitter before, I will die on the hill that it was the right move to make at the time, no matter how badly it aged. So I guess there was a tweet out there, someone talking about how it was Dubas' worst move ever and how they shouldn't have rolled the dice on him at that time. And Brian replied to the tweet and said, 2020, Leaf fans say, "Can't believe Dubas didn't go all in at the deadline." 2021, fans say, "Can't believe Dubas went all in at the deadline." So he just cannot win, man. He cannot win.
No. And as much as Dubas gets that hot seat being with the team that he is, but you see that with all the general managers, in every sport, right? Everybody knows better after the fact.
Yeah.
Everybody really does know better. So yeah, I agree with Foligno. We all liked it. We said it on the show. We were raving about it. It didn't work out, but there was no one that knew that at the time for sure. Peter, how about you? What'd you see on Twitter or Instagram or whatever else you were on this week? MySpace, maybe? I don't know.
I think that might be dead right now, but I'm going to shout out to just Leafs Nation on Twitter and everything that unfolded today. It was just absolutely insane with the McCann trade, with the Ellis trade, with even the news of Tarasenko being put on the exemption list. It was just a whirlwind of everyone just saying, "Wait, what? Are you kidding me?" And it was just absolutely amazing to just see all those reactions. I think today itself and Twitter itself gets a big round of applause because, man, it was not short on like funny comments and moments and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really? And I missed it. This was a good day. I tried to go on holidays and miss it all, and I miss a good day.
Can I jump back in with one more social media plug right here? Okay,
sure.
Just because earlier on in the show we were raving about David Pagnotta and how he deserves some more credit in the hockey media world. Mm-hmm. I just want to point out that just before 2:30 today, he tweeted, "The next 35 minutes before the freeze could be entertaining. Stay tuned." And look what happened. Jared McCann, Ryan Ellis, Nolan Patrick, Cody Glass, Tarasenko news, Carey Price news. I know that didn't exactly fall under the 35-minute threshold that he pointed out, but he did promise entertainment. He delivered. So once again, Magnotta gets it right.
Hey, maybe we should try to get him on the show. We'll see. Now it sounds like we've got fans right here. Maybe we should try.
Right
Give him the blue check mark right now.
Give him the blue check mark. Yeah. And he'll get the blue check mark if he shows up on the Maple Leafs Lounge. That's the way to get the blue check mark.
But he doesn't get it until after he's on the show. That's how it works.
Exactly. Yes. We'll do a ceremony on the show for him.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we're going to have a whole lot more to talk about next week because we will know who the Seattle Kraken is and who the Leafs lost and what they've done in the meantime. And also free agency will be just around the corner at that point as well. So we hope you like this show. We hope you follow, like us, and jump on social media. Leave comments below as well. But make sure you're back next week when we can break down all of that information as the hockey world just keeps on spinning faster and faster out of control. And it's a lot of fun to talk about. So thanks so much for joining us, everybody. I'll be back in a normal space next week. So but maybe try to have a holiday, guys. Enjoy the summer. Have some fun.
I'll try.
We will see you.
Always.
Okay. We'll see you next week, everyone. Have a good one.